Hi guys, I'm Michelle Carpenter, and these chats is what I have been guided to do. And I have a beautiful special guest here today who's magically come into my life in the last 2 to 3 weeks. His name is Stephen Lewis, and we live in a beautiful town called Nelson in New Zealand. And these chats and these kinds of interviews are very much about the walks of life that we've all been on. And we want you to know that as human beings, it's about reconnecting, it's about being in the moment, it's about being present. We might have tears, we might have laughter, who knows, okay? We might have quirkiness and weirdness that goes with it too. But Stephen and I'm going to ask him some questions about his life, about his journey, and we'd love for you to subscribe to both our channels, and we'll put the details on at the bottom of this clip. And please comment and feel free to ask any questions as well. So here we are, amazing Stephen Lewis. I feel so honored. So first of all, let me start, guys, by saying, any guesses as to how young this man is sitting opposite me right now? Stephen, would you like to tell us how young you are?
No. I'm 70.
Isn't that amazing? Wow.
I'm not grown up, but 70.
That's okay. That's okay. And what would you say has defined, would it be your genes? What has defined you on this journey of life by, first of all, keeping yourself looking so young and vibrant?
I indulge myself in lots of things. I have a good time. That's what keeps me young, is I thoroughly enjoy myself. Look, I was never authentic in the first half of my life, exactly actually 35 years ago, and beyond backwards. I was not authentic. I used to go and sit with my mum and say, this isn't my life. I've got a wife, I've got a child, I've got a successful business, and I don't know who I'm supposed to be. I just know I'm not supposed to be this person. And in an extraordinary moment, fun enough, I was thinking about it. It was my Saturn return year, 29. I made a decision. Set of circumstances just came into my life, and I grabbed them with both hands, and I left that life. And I went into a wilderness. I had no idea what was going to happen, but I seemed protected. Somehow or other, things worked, even though maybe they shouldn't have done. I had a woman come into my life who would not release me, and I loved her very much, but I knew I wasn't meant to marry her, and she didn't get that. And in the end, having left her for a year to go around the world and have an adventure, I came back and she knocked on my door and said, I'm never going to let you go. And I knew she wasn't going to. I married her, and it lasted 13 weeks. Because it was only ever going to do that, but it needed to be done. The nice conclusion to the story is 35 years later, we still speak twice so we can adore each other. So we weren't meant to be married. But I one day was at a party and on, would you believe, a canal boat in London, very unusual. And there was a guy there that I knew who I'd always found to be very dull, very uninteresting. And that night he was absolutely high as a kite. He was just, he was having the time of his life. And I asked him what had happened, and he said he'd done a self-help workshop. And I thought, you know what? So I got the details from him and phoned up the next day, and to my astonishment, they had a course starting that very week. And I put my name down, gave them my credit card, and next thing I know, it's Thursday night, and I'm in a room with 40 people in Chelsea, in London, and I have no idea what I'm doing, other than I discover it's a spiritual workshop, and I ain't a spiritual kind of guy. And I went up to the guy who was running it and said, I think I made a mistake. And he said, there are no mistakes. You're meant to be here.
So let me ask you something before you continue.
Yes.
Okay. You spoke about you weren't living your authentic life. What did that mean for you as a young man? Because so many people are seeking, including myself, seeking to be more authentic, okay? And so many of us doubt ourselves. So how did you know that you were not living your authentic life? Give us perhaps an understanding, or
all right. There was no real joy. all these things that other people craved that I had achieved in my life: a beautiful wife, a lovely spirited son, a successful career. This was what everyone craved, and it wasn't doing it for me, and I knew it wasn't. I knew in my quietest private moments that I was not fulfilling myself, and that I wasn't living my true existence. And to anyone listening to this, if that is the truth, then you will know it. And if you are, wonderful, and I congratulate you, and maybe you can let me know how to do it. I'd like to think I've started to do it in the last 35 years. But anyway, that was what it felt like. I knew that I wasn't being very deep level. It's not an intellectual thing, it's an intuitive feeling. And that's what I did. And
did you feel quite low in your life? Did you feel like your vibration was quite low? Did you feel like your energy was low?
No, I just knew there was more. That was all it was. It was just this absolute certainty that it wasn't I was meant to be more, that I wasn't being the more I was meant to be.
I love that. Yeah. Say that again.
I'm not sure I can do. I don't know. I wasn't being the more I was meant to be.
Amazing. Yeah. Okay. So fast forward to Chelsea and your self-help workshop.
I'd arrived there on a Thursday evening, and as I say, I said, I'm not meant to be here, and he said, oh yes, you are. And there were 40 people, and they were all good-hearted people, and it was going to be a lovely experience one way or the other. And the Thursday night, very full on. The Friday night, even more so, very draining, long into the evening. Saturday morning, by Saturday evening at 10 o'clock, I was utterly exhausted. It was very interesting, but I sort of sat there and intellectualized and rationalized it all. And I wasn't getting, other people were rebirthing and catharting and having these extraordinary experiences. I'm just sitting there judging, because that's what I was good at. And
do you come from a spiritual background at all?
Not at all. A difficult childhood, and lots of suppressed emotions, and lots of healing work that was going to need to be done at some point in my life, and I knew that. And there I am, 10 o'clock at night. I'm lying on the floor, my hands cushioning my head, exhausted. Just want, let me go home, please. Let me go home. I'm exhausted.
What am I doing here?
I wasn't one of them. I wasn't getting what they were getting. And like I say, it was stimulating. It was very interesting, but I was outside it, not inside it.
Yes.
And one of the helpers, I assume, came up behind me and almost whispered in my ear, you're never going to get this. You're intellectualizing it and rationalizing it. And for the next process, just be a child. Do it with the open-heartedness of a child. Wow. And I heard what he said, and I turned round to thank him, and there was nobody there.
Wow.
And even as nobody there.
Wow. Oh my God.
Before I had time to digest what had just happened, our leader said, right, everybody up, and he put on some music, and we all danced furiously, and I was confused. And then he said, right, he said, we're going to start the next process. It's very important, this. You're going to go back to your childhoods, and what I'm going to ask you to do is I'm going to ask you to go to that corner over there, and I want you to pick up an imaginary spade and a bag, and you're going to fill that bag with the pain of your childhood. Wow. And I made a resolution in that moment that I was going to do what he said. I was going to be the child, and I was going to do it as a child would do it. And I was going to take 2 bags, because I paid a lot of money for this course, and I was entitled to 2 imaginary bags. And that's what I did. And as a child would, sort of secretly, I went back into my childhood, and I took these 2 imaginary bags, and he said, now, what I want you to do is I want you to fill your bag, didn't know I had to, with all the pain of your childhood. And I filled my 2 bags right to the very brim, and probably could have filled a third as well. That's what it felt like. And as a child would, I was so excited to be doing this. He said, now I want you to go over to your spaceship. And I knew what he meant. Not as an adult, but as a child, I knew what he meant. And I dragged these 2 heavy bags to my imaginary spaceship. And I mounted my spaceship. He said, now press the button and go into geostationary orbit. And I did, as a child would do. I pressed the button, held on for dear life, making sure my 2 bags didn't slip off. And I went up into the stratosphere. And he said, now hit the button, stop. And I hit the button and I stopped. And he said, now what I want you to do is I want you to pick up your bag. He didn't know. And I want you to lift it over your head. And I want you to start to whir it around. And I did, with all the gusto of a child and all this pain of my life. And I went faster and faster and faster. And he said, now throw the pain away. And with all my might, I threw these two bags away. And in the moment that I did it, there was a loud cracking noise that came out of my chest. And I thought I had had a heart attack.
Wow. And you were how old?
I was 35.
Wow.
He said, right, everybody, we stop now for 5 minutes, just take in what's happened. And I couldn't understand that people weren't rushing over to me and laying me down and calling an ambulance, because there was this crack. It was audible to me anyway, but they didn't. Everyone just sort of wandered off, and I walked into a corner and I stood holding myself where the noise had come from. And sobbing. I was just beside myself. I'd given away my... And this had happened to me. Wow. Now, on the first evening, that Thursday evening, of the 40 people there, there'd been a guy that I particularly didn't like. And I'd not said anything to him. I'd interacted with everyone on the course over the next 3 days, but we'd not shared a moment together. In all the shared experiences, he'd never been in my little group. On that Saturday night, I'm standing there holding my chest and sobbing, looking at the floor. And as I'm looking at the floor, a pair of multicolored socks appeared in my line of view. He was in my face. And without any introduction at all, he simply said to me, do you know you have a gift? Do you know you're a healer? And in that moment, I knew who I was. For the first time in my life, I knew who the authentic me was meant to be. I knew that all the emotions I'd experienced for 35 years were true, that I wasn't being who I was meant to be. And only by giving away, or the very first stage of giving away, the pain of my childhood, could I start to become the authentic me. It's fun. I've told this a million times, but today I'm in tears. I gave it away, and in that moment, and his name was Richard, and he became my constant companion for the next 6 months of my life.
Wow. Sure.
My life shifted in that moment, and I didn't know what it meant, but I knew with absolute certainty what it meant for me. It meant that I'd been given my life.
So, you know, even with you, if I may say so, with you being vulnerable right now, because I can feel it very much in both our hearts as you're telling the story. And this is something that sometimes, I don't know if you found in your healing journey, but and journey of being a healer, but sometimes this is where, just like you were in the logical mind in the beginning of the workshop, trying to understand everything, trying to understand, maybe being in protection mode. This is the pivotal, beautiful moment of being open-hearted, because listen to your words. You've said this and told the story so many times, yet there's still tears that come with the story. So, you know, this is one thing that I truly know as a truth, is that it doesn't matter. When we're telling it with feeling, the feeling's still there, the heart still remembers.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially today, because I haven't spoken this in the way I am doing it with you and whatever the audience is that shares this. And I've not done that before. I've done it on stage, but I've never done it like this. And I would have hoped, I hadn't thought about it, but I would have hoped that it would have affected me. And clearly it has. So without apologizing for it, here I am, emotional.
Yes. Isn't that beautiful? Wow.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for allowing, okay? Because that's the perception of so many men, is that, you know, they're quite stoic. And it's just beautiful to see that on anybody's journey, when the moment or the synchronicity is meant to happen, it happens, as you and I know.
Yes.
We could speak about stories, but that's the beauty of the resonance with anybody. If we can open up our hearts even more. But it's taking away the baggage of what needs to be taken away. And what a beautiful exercise. I'm like, ooh, I think I could use that in my workshops. That sounds amazing.
Well, anything that gets people beyond the limits that they self-impose.
Yes, but that's the thing. It's like, You know, when I first met you, there's still that childlike mannerism between both of us, which is beautiful. You know, we just said we know each other and we don't know how we know each other, but we do. And we chuckled and we laughed, and you spoke of the rainbow that was over our house. But that would be kids, wouldn't it? You know, they just meet and they look at the rainbow. Or
a heart connection. It's not an intellectual connection. It's a connection much more profound than that. And yeah, when I drove to Michelle's house, there was a rainbow.
yeah.
I've got photographs of it. There was a rainbow, and the bottom of the rainbow seemed over her house, and that was where I had been directed to go for the next shift in my being. And there she was, the girl at the end of the rainbow.
You can stay. Okay, so then what happened? Tell us.
Well, the irony was that all my life, my little joke is I was always more popular with girls in the winter than the summer, because when I touched them, they would feel this heat and they wouldn't know what it was, but it felt very nice and very comforting and unthreatening. So they'd never say, "Hey, take your hand off." They'd say, "No, leave your hand there." And I'd always had this heat. I learned in that moment, I learned it from Richard, that this was a healing energy that had always been within me, but which I had not been ready to be entrusted with until I had begun the journey to make peace with the little boy within me. And that took 35 years and could have taken a whole lifetime and never been fulfilled. But that was my time. And in that moment, I learned that that was the gateway for my healing gift. And over the next period of time with him, I took him with me. He lived in a caravan. He meditated and sat all day long in this little caravan. That was his life. He was a deeply spiritual man. So I took him with me to Spain to get away from all of my English influences. And I sat in a lovely little villa by the coast in the desert, and was, for the first time in my life, I was just in the being. And Richard taught me the very basics of where the chakras on the body are and how to touch them. And when I did it first on him, he said, do you know what you're doing to me? And I said, I have no idea, but I hope it's legal. And he said, every chakra you touch is opening up from your hands.
Wow.
And I had no idea of this. And to this day, 35 years later, if I do a laying on of hands, and it's rare nowadays, then it always has, I do it in exactly the same 5 places he showed me. I do it in exactly the same way that he showed me, because it never needed to be advanced from that. It was perfect from the very first time he showed it to me.
And do you feel the energy in your hands, or do you feel the energy in the body shifting?
Now, I just feel a sort of ecstasy. It's a lovely thing to do. I try not to think when I'm doing that part of my work. I am irrelevant to it. My healing gift is what's relevant in that moment. Later on, I combine the two, where what the energy does is it quietens the head and opens the heart. The heart feels this energy and knows it's in a safe place. So it says to the head, shut up, it's my time. And the head becomes still. I used to lay people out after I had placed my hands on them, and they pass into a completely altered state for about 15 or 20 minutes, and I'd bring them back. They didn't want to come. I'd bring them back, and then we'd sit down, and over what initially was 3 hours, and then it shortened to 2 hours, and then became 10 minutes, ironically. I was able to take them from go to woe to just by saying, what's not working in your life? And because they were telling me from their heart and not from their head, I wasn't hearing what their ego wanted to present to the world. I was hearing their truth. And then I worked out a formula, and it was very simple, and it never really changed. It matured, but it never really changed, where I would take them on a journey and for them to reveal to me the truth of where their pain was and why it blocked their life. But again, not from their ego, not from who they thought they should be, but from where their heart knew they needed to be and the peace they needed to make with themselves before they could be there. And then I would teach them some very simple daily practices, and I would give them an unconditional, absolute 100% money back guarantee. If you do these simple things the way I've shown you, your life will change. And equally, I will give you 100% guarantee. If you don't do them, your ego will dominate you again, and you'll go back to where you were, and I'll be wrong, and that's okay, because I'll be off somewhere having a wonderful time. But you'll still be in your darkness. This is your journey, not mine. And what I've taught you is very simple. But you have to practice it every day.
That's okay. So that's it. It's about being consistent.
It's
So,
about taking responsibility.
mm, mm,
You don't need to think in terms of being, because I meditate twice a day. I never think, oh, I've got to meditate. I think it's time for my meditation.
yes,
It's about surrendering to the things that will feed you with such rewards if you do them, that you never need to negotiate with them. The only person you ever need to negotiate with is the little girl up there or the little boy in here who says, yes, but.
yes.
Yes, but aren't we getting out? And no, we're meditating first. It's not an issue. It's not negotiable. I'm doing it because I always feel so wonderful afterwards. And I get that for you, it may not suit you, but it's
Yes.
my life.
Well, I just want to bring to the viewer's attention that in that moment of you talking about meditation, you know, the way you described it was like, well, I'm going to meditate, but then I'm going to meditate. And that's the difference in the vibration of who we are as people. Again, it's the excitement. You know, for me, so many people have assumed that meditation is hard work, and it can be when we're in the mind. So I would suggest to anybody starting out, watch a candle burn. Just watch the flame dance. Just watch it, because it just gives you something to focus on. But to go and sit like after 35 years, or, I was 33 when my journey started to open up, and like sitting and going, how do I quiet my mind? How do I do this? When you don't have perhaps the tools. So how did you learn, besides that beautiful open-hearted moment of being in that workshop, how did you learn to connect more to your heart space?
I have experienced a series of magic and miracles that have made this just the sweetest and most gorgeous journey imaginable. I never contrived to learn anything. Everything that I needed to know on this journey was brought to me. Understandings were brought to me. Moments of clarity came to me. And what I've learned is you don't create this journey, you get out of the way of it. Mm. Now, that was not easy for me because I needed to be in control, because
based on your past, based on your life and how you were raised.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I still, to this day, 35 years later, I still check myself regularly and still find myself to be curiously imperfect in my practices, because this is earth, not heaven. You don't get it right. You just get it less wrong. And in the getting it less wrong, the universe comes and supports you. And all these extraordinary things happen. And they happen to me sometimes on a daily basis. I will know I am connected to what I like to call the more, what exists beyond me.
Wow.
And I get these signs, I get them on a daily basis sometimes, and sometimes they're not, and that doesn't matter because I'm not looking for them. That's the great joy of them. I have all these little synchronistic events. I had one that happened last night, and I was going to share it with you in our conversation today. And because it's so lightweight, because it's of so little consequence other than it's the more talking to me. And once you recognize there is a conversation going on between the limits of who you are and the more that is everything outside of you, you can actually relax yourself, relax your grip, and allow the flow of the universe to take you on your journey. I was just doing, as I often do, as I always do, a cryptic crossword with my dinner. And I had bought a sushi takeaway. And the clue, and this was only the second one I've done in the 18 months that I've been here. It's only the second time I've bought takeaway food for my dinner. It was sushi. I love sushi. And the answer to the clue was wasabi.
Okay.
And next to the crossword book was a little packet of wasabi.
Yes.
in the greater world, that isn't a major event. In my tiny little world in that moment, that was as significant as anything that's ever happened to me in my life, because it was the universe prodding me and laughing with me. I live through laughter. I love to laugh. And the universe speaks to me through things that make me laugh, because that's how I register these things. And I sat there and giggled at the fact there's a packet of wasabi next to me having just written the word wasabi down as the answer to the clue. And I didn't make the connection until I looked, and I thought, that's extraordinary. And that happens to me sometimes on a daily basis, sometimes several times a day. There will just be extraordinary moments of synchronicity when I am reminded perhaps because I need to be, that the universe is so very much more than I am or I could ever imagine it to be. But when I'm conscious of it, it assists me in my journey.
Yes.
And when I'm not conscious of it, I'm just the ordinary me who stumbles around and screws things up and just does what men do.
You know what? But don't you often, like, as you were talking about the wasabi, I thought, I think the universe sometimes looks at us and goes, duh, like, really, people? Duh. You know, if it had eyes, the eyes would be crossing and going, really? Actually? Duh, humans. It's so simple, actually.
But I absolutely take your point. I would like to think that after 35 years, I have a sense of when the universe is trying to communicate with me. It does not mean I get everything right. I most certainly don't. I can bring you witnesses to confirm that. But in my efforts, I do not allow myself to not see beyond what I want. That'll be the first moment the little boy speaks, says yes, but I've trained myself to hear yes, but. So I give it away. And that's when I will simply, and this works so wonderfully. And people sometimes struggle to understand that it could be this simple. I will go outside and stand on Mother Earth and ask out loud, God, I'm a bit confused about this. Could you show me what I need to do? And it never fails. It just doesn't always give me what I thought I wanted to hear as the answer. And sometimes it's almost instantaneous. And sometimes because I'm looking in the wrong direction or I've got my head firmly stuck up my you-know-what, that it takes a while to get it. But when I do eventually get it, I realize how resistant I must have been to have denied myself the access to it when it was first given to me.
Yes.
And to anyone that watches this, all you have to do is go and ask on any issue you have in your life that you're not able to resolve, is to go and ask out loud. And when you have asked out loud, and this is the single most powerful thing I can teach anybody, after you've asked, shut the fuck up. Because you won't hear
Tough one for you and me, Stephen.
I knew. But it's true for everyone. It's that voice afterwards that says, these are my terms and conditions. No, they don't work. What works?
So would you call that expectations? Would you call that, like you said,
it's what got you in the mess in the first place, is having an expectation of what you believe life was supposed to be. It isn't.
Yes.
And magic and miracles happen constantly for everyone if they'll only shut up and allow them to, but they will not be what you would have chosen in the first instance from your place of ego. But they will be the easy journey away from whatever isn't working. And if we learn that and practice that, our life becomes a little easier.
Yeah. So for people who are starting out on their journeys, okay, wherever that may be, because everybody starts in a, like for me, I had quite a few traumatic experiences, and I think it was a way of the universe saying, come on, you need to wake up, you need to wake up to yourself, you need to wake up to yourself. And it was like, huh? And eventually I did. You had this, what sounds to me like a real defining moment of clarity and going, this is not who I am. And I know that even in my marriage with my husband, who you've met, who's a beautiful, beautiful human being, but we've had a lot of clashes in our relationship in terms of, I'm on this path, he's on this path, you know, and he'll often use a phrase, let me be who I am. And I'll hit back with, well, who are you? And then it pisses him off even more. And it's such a truth if you think of it. It's well, who are we? Who are we as human beings? Yeah, we so many of the spiritual teachers out there are saying, well, we're spirits having a human experience. You and I know that, but for so many humans that are in their human world, where would you suggest, besides going outside and asking out loud, where would you suggest that they start? Would be inner child work? Would that be a good thing? Because I hear so many clients who say to me, and I don't know if you've had the same, I had the perfect childhood. And I think, oh, well, your body's not showing you that you had the perfect childhood. Yep, I'm judgmental, okay? But in the moment, our body stores what it stores. And it is interesting because so many people don't like wanting to do inner child work. But you've spoken about your little boy so often. And I know for me, that's the one place that we all need to go to, because we've got so many subconscious programmings. So where would you say to somebody if they came to you and said, okay, Stephen, here's my comments, where do we start?
There's a two-tier answer to this. The first and more important one for me is the one that my heart so completely trusts, and that is that you don't. And what you do is, if you go to the universe, God, whoever and whatever you want to call it, and you say, I am ready. And if I'm not, show me how to be ready. And if I resist, I surrender. Do whatever you need to do to take me to a place where I can begin the journey to self-healing.
Beautiful.
What I learned was, well, first of all, let me just complete that by saying the universe provides everything we need. If you don't ask or you make it conditional, the universe can't. If you surrender yourself, and it's appropriate in that moment because you've made the space for it, the universe will provide you with everything you need. It happens by magic. I've had this so many times. I was going to say I've had this thousands of times, but I probably literally in 35 years have had it thousands of times.
Sure.
Just these extraordinary little moments, just the wasabi thing, the little reminder, God's sense of humor, I call it, where there is just a moment where I am reminded of the more that there is and that I am so blessed to access.
Yes.
Just through a little example of something that couldn't happen, yes, but it did.
Yes.
So there are two answers. One is just go and ask, and then critically, after you've asked and made it unconditional, do whatever you need to do. I surrender, bring into my life what I need. And if I don't get it, clip me around the back of the head, get my attention, and keep doing it, because I'm serious. I need and want to change my life, and I can't do it on my own.
Yes.
And I can't do it intellectually. That's where the problem lives.
So those cries for help are heard, aren't they? Those cries.
They absolutely are.
Doesn't matter what culture you come from, what background, what religion, those cries for help are heard.
Yeah, they're not to do with any of that. They're to do with the absolute base position of the human soul.
Yes.
You know, whatever journey it goes on, but it starts as part of God.
Yes.
The God that lives within each of us. And that's the only God I understand. I don't have any practices that involve an external God. When I'm talking out loud, I'm still talking to my God.
Yes.
And he and she, your God, they are one and the same, but individual for each of us.
Yes.
And that feels an absolute truth to me. What I know is, and I was taught this, at the very, very beginning, I was taught this, and it resonated for me, and I used it in all my healing work, and never went on any courses or anything that would make me a better healer, because that never felt as if it was authentic for me. But what I learned is that in the first 9 months in the womb, the foundations of who we will be all of our life are laid by usually an innocent person who has no idea that every single emotion they are sharing, not thought, but feeling that they are sharing with this embryo inside them, both directly from themselves and their own 9-month experience, but from their partner in his presence or his absence, and everything else around them that's affecting them on a daily basis. And then you go back to their own experience in the womb and who they were told to be. And that is the foundation upon which the house that you will live in all your life is laid. Over the 3 years after you are born, the house is built. That is the expectations you will have of life. Again, primarily not based intellectually, but based on the emotions that you experience around you, of who you will expect to be. And from the age of 3, it's pretty much written in stone, figuratively and literally, if it's a stone house. And that is where you will live your life, unless you go back and you investigate who you were told to be. For anyone listening to this, just ask yourself, who was my mum? Even if you were adopted out, who was this woman who was going to separate herself from me? What messages did she send me? This gorgeous woman who knew she was going to love me all of her life and I was going to complete her life. What expectations did she place on me? What emotions, what doubts, what fears, what unresolved issues did she carry through her life and bring into my presence in her womb? Not with malevolence, but with ignorance, because we were all ignorant.
Sure.
And who was this man she was with or wasn't with? What part did he play in it? What part did other siblings play in it? What part did all of their parents and all of their history play in this? And it's never been the case, ever, that will not lead directly back to the original cause of the problem that you are experiencing at 20 or 50 or 100 years of age. You can trace it all the way back to it's how you view something. You know, whether you view the cup as half full or half empty, and you're taught that in the womb. And for the rest of your life, you will swear that that's right because it's what you see, but it isn't. It's what you were taught to see.
Yes. Yes. So how have you on your journey discovered your emotions, your energy in motion, your feelings, with just what you said? Okay.
Well, it began on that day, and I'm not sure intellectually I can answer it, because what happened was this gift of Richard came to me, and we would sit and we would talk and talk and talk and talk. And I started to view everything in my life differently. My father, just to begin to make peace with this man who wrought such pain on my early life, to try and understand who he would have been in his childhood, the son of a man who was mustard gassed in the First World War, who divorced his wife and was almost never seen again, a wife who was disempowered, who gave very early age and carried his damage all the way through his life, and never for a moment tried to make peace with it. And the irony was this enormous source of pain in my early life became the gift that created the foundations of what I was given to teach. And I would not have asked for it. And if you said, do you want to go back and do it again? I say, no, can we look at plan B on this? Because that really, really, really hurt. But I know that my understandings that I share, and I live by primarily, more important than anything else that I live by, came from those negative experiences in my childhood. And I don't every day say, thank you for them. But I do understand that I wouldn't have had this second half of my life, which I have enjoyed beyond my wildest expectations. And so it was worth it. And because I'm living in the light rather than the darkness now, yeah, I can say that. And as I say, you go back 40, 50 years, and I'm 60, 70 years, and I definitely would not have said that. But today I'm very grateful for what it gave me, not for having to experience it, but what the gifts were within it when I finally started to unwrap them. And that's true for everyone that's listening to this. We all, and I still have, unwrapped gifts.
Yes.
Yeah, and we all do throughout your life. This isn't perfect. It's not heaven, it's earth. But there you are.
You spoke of your son, and with you having the childhood that you had, when your son was born, were you aware at that time? Were you consciously aware, or were you still stuck in your stuckness?
He was born, I was only 25. No, 25 when he was conceived. You don't want to know any more about that. But 26 when he but it worked.
Clearly.
26 when he was born. And the extraordinary thing was, and it's born, the truth has borne itself out, is that he was only ever going to be his own person all of his life. It doesn't mean that who his mother was and who I was weren't major players in his life, and they were, but he is an utter delight to me. He's successful in every aspect of his life by degrees. I'm enormously proud of him. He's almost a role model for me. So whether it was because of me or despite me, I can't tell you. I know that as he got older, he was, some would say overactive, some would say hyperactive, but he didn't sleep for the first 3 years of his life.
Wow.
And that would be true because the dis-ease his mother felt carrying him in what was not a satisfactory marriage because of me.
Yes.
You know, just because I was not committed to it, because my heart wasn't in it.
Yes.
That will have affected him. All these things affected him. But I also, one of the things I did was at 10 years of age, this hugely active boy, I sent him to the best sports school in England. And he got to board in this holiday camp of school where you got to, if you weren't in a class of 8 people studying, then you were part of one of the national championship teams in every sport you did.
Wow.
It's called Millfield. It still exists today, and it would have been my dream. You know, instead of being sent to my room as a child all the time, my mother said all he needs is a field to run in, and my father said, go to your room. And I would not have that with my son. I knew the pressure he put on me because of his great energy.
Yeah.
And anyway, he went to this school, and it was a continuance of the making of him, but he was always a very strong individual, and still is this day, and the father of 2 children, and very successful.
So did you see any patterns, any childhood patterns that had come from your father through you through to your son? Did you see, even though you knew that there was to go back to where you were in your age and your stage of life, as you became more aware, did you notice any patterns? Did you notice, because that seems like the thing at the moment, everybody talks about patterns. Even myself, in the work that I do, I see intergenerational patterns, that exactly what you're talking about, go back into the womb, and did you notice any, besides the normal personality or the behaviors, did you notice any emotions did he reflect emotions to you that perhaps you had suppressed on your journey?
Do you know, I'm not sure I can even answer that. I've not contemplated that. What I've known is I have always tried, despite myself at times, as well as because of myself. But I left his mother when he was 3. So the nature of our relationship before I left was that I would have short periods with him where we would explode in energy together. And then he had his mother, his grandmother, and the au pair chasing after him, and I wasn't needed. And that worked very well. So for half an hour after I got home, we'd both be naked in the bedroom. He'd throw me against the wall. I'd throw him on the bed. We'd fight. We'd do all these things. I'd fall asleep. His mother would take him away because I'd come home from work. And it sort of worked. And I would take him on specific missions. He'd come to football with me. He'd come to my parents with me. He was always busy. All of his life with me, we did sport together.
Okay.
So I found media through which we could be the most comfortable together we could be. And also, I mean, things, again, that I certainly didn't grow up with. And I'm not saying every night I would tickle his feet and he would tickle mine on the sofa. Every night.
Wow.
Right through until effectively he went off into his own world. We would still tickle each other's feet. That's when I put him to bed as a child, I would tickle his back. I knew that my heart could love him better than my head could. And that through touching, and we just tickled feet, and we could do it tomorrow if he was here and not the other side of the world, and there wouldn't be the slightest discomfort in doing it. We would just tickle each other's feet the way we always did, and that took us to that place of heart connection rather than mental connection, because that was never going to work. A heavily overactive 6-year-old or whatever, there is no winner in that. Yeah, or there wasn't going to be with the 2 of us. But lying on the sofa tickling feet after we played tennis and thrown a frisbee and done all these things all day long, that worked. So I think I was as much healing myself through him as I was trying not to pass the damage down into him. And he's been a wonderful role model for me. And I watch him with his children, and it astonishes me he does not make himself their victim.
Wow.
And I find that extremely.
Explain that. Give us an example of how you've noticed that.
Well, just looking at myself, I was set up to be a victim, so I would make myself his victim all the time.
In what way? In what way would you make yourself his victim?
If he was, throwing things about and making too much noise, or it was 11 o'clock at night and he was still in his room doing things and not asleep and didn't do his homework and all that stuff, I would make myself the victim of that. I would make a conflict out of it because that's what I grew up with.
Okay, I'm with you.
And I watch him with his children, and I don't think I have ever heard him raise his voice.
Wow.
And he got it. He just got it. And wow. Sorry?
That's a talent in itself.
He's hugely gifted. And
wow. I could learn from him. I just felt
I learned from him. I watch him with his children and I am blown away. Wow. And we have these gorgeous conversations, and he finds time for me in his busy life, and we have these sort of half-hour conversations every couple of weeks when I'm around the world, which is usually where I am. And I just have this grin on my face. He has no need of me, and I have no need of him. Yes. We are independent of each other, but we are singularly the most important person outside of
Yes.
yeah, his wife and children.
Yes.
So he honors me and I honor him, and I am just immensely proud of him. And he's making us. He's just in the very last 2 weeks, he's bought his dream house.
Wow.
Yeah, he's in his early 40s. He's got a successful business. Don't tell your listeners, but it's an adult sex toy business.
Oh, I definitely need to get in contact with him.
Who doesn't? Who isn't sitting there thinking, well, if anyone's interested, it's called Hot Octopus with 2 S's. And he was sitting at his desk in a very successful job. And one day he thought to himself, why is it the girls get all the sex toys and the boys don't? And a year later, he'd made some inquiries about this. He was having dinner with his wife and his mother-in-law and 2 of her friends who are very successful newspaper owners. These are heavyweight people. And the following day, the wife phoned him up and said, are you serious about this? And he said, well, I think I am. She said, I will fund it if you will stop work. Wow. And give yourself to this, because I believe in you. And I also believe that you understand that in this, for a woman to use, it is not how, you know, the world of self-pleasure, or sort of 7 or 8 years later, he's got this enormous global business.
That's amazing.
People keep wanting to take it over, and he says, no, this is my business. I'm growing my business. And it's Hot Octopus. I didn't set out to promote him, but why?
Listen, I'm sure he'd be very happy.
I'm sure he would. I'm sure he would. Yeah, you froze for a moment.
Yeah, I, for some reason, the internet is coming and going. I'm not too sure why. But
well, the person controlling the internet was listening and writing down Hot Octopus. They put us on hold.
Oh, hold on. I need to get some goodies for there.
I got stuff to take care of.
Exactly. You know what?
Go on.
I would like to offer the listeners out there, because I feel like you have so much insight to offer, so many people out there. And you and I have discussed this in terms of, I want to call it like a series, but not a series. But I think we need to know more about your journey and how you have, we've sort of given a rough sort of overdraft as to a few things, but we've also spoken in depth about a few things. And it really is, it's about you being the teacher here. And it's about how can we teach, or how can you teach people out there that could perhaps even, I don't know if you're open to this or if you'd like this, but besides commenting.
I am, not only am I completely open to it, but what I love about it is that it makes exactly the point that I was giving to you and to the people listening to this, that when it's appropriate, the universe provides the person or the situation that will take you forward in your life. I came to see you because I was frustrated and knew there was more and didn't know how to reach it. And you weren't the first person I thought I would get in touch with, but every other door was closed and you were the open door. And I knew absolutely that it was you. And here we are, absolutely demonstrating what it was that I spoke of a few minutes ago. If you go and ask, I stood on my beautiful balcony overlooking the Tasman Sea and Golden Bay, and I said, God, you know, I've loved being here in lockdown, and thank you for the great blessing of being safe and in this gorgeous place. I have more to give, and I feel a frustration building in me. What is it I need to do? And if I'm not hearing you when you tell me, give me a clip round the ear. And God didn't need to, because I knew immediately when I was given your name, because it's my sister's name, that you were going to be the right person. And from the beaming smile that you gave me when my car pulled up, I knew it was right. And here you are opening the door for me. So anyone who's listening to it, it's the perfect proof of what it was I teach.
Yeah.
And that is that the person will be delivered to you if you're authentic in making the request and it's appropriate and you've done whatever it is you need to do to facilitate it happening. And if you haven't, then it won't happen.
Yes. And it happens in God's time, divine time, the Moors time. I love that. The Moors. I think of s'mores. I want to go get some marshmallows and chocolate now.
Calm yourself. We're nearly finished.
So would you like people to contact you if they have any questions? Would you like people to contact you in terms of, would you be offering any kinds of services in future to help people out there? Or what's your sense as to where we're at in our open-heartedness?
All right. And the answer is, I don't know.
Okay.
It's my first day, effectively. This is the first time I've ever done this. I've spoken to people all over the world. I've spoken to I've calculated what's tens and tens of thousands of people in that part of my journey, but not of late. It's just been individuals, and I've loved it. And that was what I was told to expect. You and I in a conversation will discuss this outside of this. And if people contact you, because you are their first point of contact anyway, you will be able to tell them whatever it is we're going to do, and whether it is a question and answer thing. What I don't even understand
Me
how the
too.
media works.
Absolutely.
But
Yes.
between the three of us, between Brent, you and me, we'll work out how we can fulfill what anyone who has seen this and it's resonated with them,
Yes.
what it is they need.
Yes. Well,
So
there you
I
go.
will trust.
Yes, absolutely. And that, I was just going to say, as you said that, my heart just went, yep, that's exactly it. We'll trust the process without, my head also kicks in sometimes. I'm like, okay, where are we going to go? Like, I want to help, you, and how's this going to help? But we don't know as we sit here right now, as we know that we've just had a beautiful connection with beautiful stories. And if there is anybody out there who is really wanting to connect with either you or myself, we'll put details on the YouTube link. And I personally want to say, I feel incredibly grateful that you've come into my life.
And me too. From that very first moment of your beaming face coming to my path, and me not running you over. I thought that's a good sign, and we had nothing but good signs, and we're blessed to have found each other.
Absolutely, absolutely. So we'll see where this goes. We'll see if this is going to become a series. But in my heart, I do feel like you have so much information to share with the world, and it is most certainly shining our light in these times of where people might feel quite dim, and where their vibration might be low and their hearts might be in protective mode and closed. And the more we can lift their vibrations, it's that ripple effect, like the stone that skims the water, and you do it the first time and it goes bloop, and then you do it the second or third time and it goes bloop, bloop, bloop. And that's what we want to do, is create that ripple effect, which will be great. So from my heart to yours, I say thank you for today, and we'll hopefully catch up with each other soon. Okay. Lots of love.
And to you and to everyone.
Yeah, to everyone out there. Absolutely. Thank you.